And we are live. Hello, beautiful
Ooh.
friends. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome to another book review for the Annotation Station, which is a monthly book club that we host. If this is your first time here, please consider joining us. You can get access to our Discord by becoming a channel member over at my channel at any level. Make sure you follow Natalie, who's here with me, linked down below if you're not following her. Get your life together. She's amazing. Also, it's the first date of Pride. Like,
Yes.
don't be a hater. Subscribe. That's
Yes.
yes.
Subscribe to a queer creator.
Yes. Again, it rhymes. Let's go. Cool. So we today we're gonna talk about Rehearsals for Living by Robyn Maynard and Leanne Betasamosake, if I'm saying that correctly, I think, and Simpson, which is a Black and Indigenous author having conversations. This is a nonfiction. Every month, our book club reads one nonfiction and one fiction with the goal of reading diversely and staying informed. Natalie, do you want to introduce yourself real quick before I talk about what we're going to read next month in case anybody wants to know that?
So hi everyone. I make occasionally videos on here about anime, manga, books. So shortly we will be discussing Futbolista on my channel, which was the other monthly pick for the book club. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. Oh, we have a friend. Hi, Sky.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. Did you read the book or are you here just to learn and chat? Let me know.
Both options are okay because
Both.
I'm here to chat because I was
Yes.
not able to actually finish the book.
Yes. Natalie did not finish it. Do you want to clarify why you DNF'd so people don't think that you DNF'd
Yeah,
for
like
long?
my
Okay.
DNF was a soft DNF. It's just big brain, big book. I have small brain. And so I couldn't do it for this month. I needed to read stuff that was a lot more chill. But of what I read, I was enjoying it. It just required a lot that I was not able to give at the time.
Completely valid. I did finish it. So we're just going to talk about it anyway because something I've said before is I feel like with nonfiction, part of the experience is the journey you go through reading the book and the way that the author intended you to experience it. So even though we are talking about things in the book, I think if you're interested, regardless of what you learn from us today, please do go and read it. Sky says, I always do my homework.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Amazing. We
Amazing.
love it. We
Yes,
love it.
incredible. So real quick before we get started, in case you're not here for the entire video and you're interested in joining us in the future, here is what we are reading next month. So for the month, or next month, actually this month, for the month of June, our nonfiction pick is So Many Stars, an oral history of trans, non-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit people of color by Caro de Robertis, and I believe they themselves are a trans author.
Yes.
Yes. And they are gender fluid last time I researched that as well. So cool beans. And then our fiction pick is going to be Compound Fracture.
Yes, so excited for the book club to read some Andrew
Yes.
Joseph White. I spread the good word of Andrew Joseph White, which is hilarious considering I've read like 1.5. But still,
Amazing.
excited, ready.
Heck yeah. Okay, so ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, so I got a bunch of notes here. I'm gonna try to get my big brain that is running on Sunday energy together because these two authors are incredibly intelligent women, and this entire book is what's the word? It starts with an E when it's like letters. See, I'm failing already at the big brain.
Epistolary.
Epistolary, thank you. Because it is letters that the authors wrote to each other because they are friends throughout the pandemic. And they're just talking about their lived experiences as a Black author and as an Indigenous author in Canada.
Yeah.
Yes. Sky loves Andrew Joseph White. Nice.
Yes, that's the one I read half. An excellent half, to be
Yes.
clear.
Yes.
Okay, no shade here at all.
I'm excited to get to it. Awesome. So yeah, so I'm gonna preface this book the same way that I think I plan to preface my other reviews that I plan to do for this, like for my TikTok and like my mini reviews, whatever. Um, this book is two people of color having very open and honest conversation with each other. And they become, I think, very vulnerable in this because them publishing a book of their letters about what it means for them to move through a world that is built on colonization is very vulnerable and uncomfortable. And I think that there are a lot of people, more specifically white people, who benefit from colonial practices that are not going to be comfortable with what these authors have to say, because the point of it is um, that we cannot continue to function in a world that is a settler state, a colonial state, and capitalist, and think that everything's going to work out fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something I want to like start off talking about is, and then maybe if you want to like bounce off any thoughts that you have, is this idea of where do we go from here, right? The whole point of the book is like, where do we go as a society, as a collective, more specifically as BIPOC individuals, right? Because again, these two authors are talking about their respective communities. How does the BIPOC world move forward and reforming the world? Because the reality is that capitalism and the colonizer state needs to be decentered. It
Yeah.
needs to be reconstructed. The idea of asking a person who benefits from colonial practices and hyper capitalism to reform the system and maintain their comfortability is an oxymoron, because how do you meet a system that benefits off of the destruction of other bodies in the middle?
Yeah. Like I feel like even in the section that I read of it, like their argument inherently is like, no, it needs to be destroyed. Like you cannot fix the system from within itself because it has no desire to serve everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It has a desire to serve a specific group of people. And I feel like part of the argument that's actually made is like, because indigenous and black people and in general BIPOC people are used to surviving under apocalyptic conditions, because that's
Mm-hmm.
how they describe it, they would survive the complete collapse and destruction of this system. It's a matter of how would those that it benefits be able to deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
How would they survive that potentially?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not something that they are used to. It's not something that they have needed to over and over again have to experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um so I don't know where I'm going, but that's
No,
what
you're on it. Spot on. Yeah. Literally that's where the book goes. Exactly. And which is why it's so important that they talk about like the ways in which people who benefit from these structures try to maintain this sense of control by, I mean, we could talk about the idea of othering, but I think in this sense that's not necessarily where the author specifically went to. It's more of like, how do BIPOC communities maintain their own sense of integrity and control in counter that are counterintuitive to hypercapitalism. I want to just get to the chat really quick. I thought it was interesting because it came from the Canadian gaze. Yeah, same as European. Most people thinking racism is an American issue is wrong.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also one of the things that they're trying to constantly present
Mm-hmm.
is raise awareness of, is that Canada has built this portrayal of themselves as like so good and innocent, and like they don't do these bad things, even though literally part of their history they've had to do reparations for all the harm they've done to indigenous people, whether they've actually done any reparations to for the harm they've caused black people is another issue that, and I didn't read far enough for it to get mentioned too much. Like I know they start a discussion on that, but I don't know where they go on that.
Yeah.
But it's this contradiction that's like, well, you can't present yourself as this doesn't exist here or it doesn't exist here anymore when it's not the kind of thing that you actually completely destroy from a culture. Like
Yeah.
it's going to persist in other ways, and sometimes even just literally in the present. Like it has not stopped. It's just, is it what it was before?
Exactly. Exactly. They talk about it being a global issue. There is not a continent that exists with humans on it in which ethnic cleansing has not happened or been affected by, right? Literally, I think the only place you can say where ethnic cleansing hasn't happened is like Antarctica, right? Because nobody like lives there.
Yeah.
But so thinking that it's only like what we see in mainstream kind of issue and that it's not a global problem is part of that control of white supremacy. Amazing. I'm so excited to read it, Roro. It's going to be my first one. Yes, this is also an important part of the book as well. Yeah. Reminds me when people say defund the police, doesn't mean we don't need police. It means we don't need this way of policing. Right. So like something that the Robyn Maynard talks about a lot because they've written a lot of books on Black Lives Matter and on police brutality and like police state is that the idea of policing is a response to people in power or the white body recognizing that Black bodies are regaining some sense of independence. So when Black bodies regain a sense of control of their own space, policing is then increased to be able to disrupt that community. And we're seeing this now with peaceful protests being addressed with aggression, like police aggression, which is completely unconstitutional. Like we are seeing this hyper police state come into power because that is the way that a colonizer country maintains its hierarchy that it's built upon.
Yeah, like in theory, what the police should be is either preventers of harm, or if harm has happened, a way, part of the process to address the harm and repair the harm that has occurred. But instead, their purpose is connected to control, power, maintaining certain groups of people oppressed, fearful, limited in what they can do, so that it can benefit the state, so that it can benefit the overall suppression of certain people versus not others.
100%. Our jail system is modern day slavery. 100%. The prison system should not be what it is. It needs to be completely deconstructed and revamped because the idea of having people placed there who have committed some crime against society is for them to be rehabilitated back into society to become quality citizens who promote the forward progression of society. And instead it is led to recidivism, it has led to slave labor, it has led to all of these really horrible things, and like in some cases a dependent on these systems because basic necessities like healthcare and food and a bed are not the priority right now, and that is a huge problem. And that's, again, it may sound like I'm just talking about like American problems, but these are Canadian authors, and it's very much an issue there as well. Hi, Howell.
How?
If we could live at Mars, we'd bring our bias with us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely horrible. But yes, Canada is also founded on those same systems. The international slave trade was not just a direct pipeline to and from the United States; it was to many countries.
Yeah. Interesting.
What was the conspiracy theory?
Yeah. Share with the class, Howell.
Yeah, that's interesting. Please share. I did not hear anything, but yeah, I mean, there's no sorry, not sorry. The royal family is extremely racist. Like,
Yeah.
it's fact.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to me that also ties to like the UK as well tries to present this image of like, well, we've earlier than the US and all these other people abolished slavery and all this stuff. Like you weren't the people who started this.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
y'all were the ones trying to conquer everything. And
Mm-hmm.
now you want to retract and be like, no, we're so good. Everything is so fine. We haven't done anything. Everything is, you know, super cool now. And it's like,
Yes.
that's not true. Like
Mm-hmm.
going back to that conversation of like America is seen as like, this is the epicenter of racism. This is where racism is the worst and it's only there. And it's like, no, that's insane. That's an insane claim to make. When
Mm-hmm.
the origins of all this did not even start here to
Literally.
begin with. That
Literally.
literally didn't even start here.
Yep. 110%. Indigenous people, boarding school, and the royals visiting when children were disappearing. Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear about the conspiracy, but I know about Indigenous boarding schools in
Yes.
Canada. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Also in Australia, also in the States, but like
Yeah.
royal visiting when, yeah. Oh, no.
Oh boy.
Oh, no.
Oh boy.
No, 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 no. But see, that's exactly what we're saying. Like, it is still very prominent. Brexit couldn't have happened if racism didn't
Didn't
exist.
exist. Exactly. Exactly. Like the whole point of Brexit is actually founded upon racism,
Yes.
around prejudice. It's like, how can you say you're not hateful when literally you have made ginormous decisions that impact multiple countries
Yeah.
for the sake of racism, actually?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is no such thing as a governing body eliminating racist practices for philanthropic, or what's the word? Starts with an A, I can't remember think of it, but like altruistic reasons. It's always for some kind of reciprocity, some kind of benefit, mostly to their pocket.
Yeah.
So, saying. Okay. So yeah, that is all stuff like generally that the authors go to. Again, they mostly focus on Canada, but they do talk a little bit about like Africa and Europe and like a little bit of a global lens. So yeah, that covers the note of a world where colonialism continues to functions means continual world endings for POC worldwide, like you said. That's a big part of it. And they talk about building livable lives together in the wreckage. This was a quote. I think it's from, I don't remember which author said this, that I wrote this quote from. But the whole point of this book is, where do we go from there? Right. So they talk about just them existing as friends, them visiting each other's families. I believe Robyn goes to Leanne's. I believe Leanne is from what is it called? Their tribe is the Dakota tribe, I think it's called. There's another name for it. I think Dakota
I
is
believe
not the only name.
I
I forget. I should have written that down, so that's my fault. But Robyn goes to visit Leanne. They talk about going fishing in the snow and, sledding and like all these things and just kind of like existing with their people and making these comparisons between the existence of Black and Indigenous communities and community of sharing, which is really important. So, one philosopher, which I'm really happy that they mentioned in this book, Fred Moten, who was a Black philosopher that I had to study when I was in grad school, um, has this idea of the homelessness in the positive.
Okay.
That homelessness, homelessness as a practice of giving. And I really loved this because if you want to learn more, there's a lot of videos of him talking about it on YouTube that you can Google. So I'll give you like a brief thing of it. But this idea of homelessness relating to ownership of land and space, that freedom is space. And so colonial settler states define freedom as ownership of a specific land property that is yours with certain expectations that you are going to maintain certain values of the governing body within that space, right? That you are not going to disrupt the systems that maintain power through your actions in that space. But if we think about homelessness as a practice of giving instead of homelessness as a definition of not of unownership, that community practices by BIPOC communities is about this space is our space. I do not own this space. Our children come here to learn. We feed each other. We house each other. Our families and our friends move in and out of these spaces because we share it together, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, to me that comes very much from the colonizing of a bunch of places. The European mindset was that of ownership, like you own things, you want to claim that you own something. And they could not comprehend this notion, and that's part of what they used against the indigenous people, that the indigenous people had no desire and no framework of like, I own this land and I have even some written formal way to represent that this belongs to me, because that's not the point. This is ours. This is for our community to live together, work together, care for each other and the land itself as well. Because the priority isn't claiming something for the sake of like, this is mine and you can't be here and you can't touch it, you can't anything. The purpose is for it to be a space where a community can live and thrive.
100%. 100%. Yep. Sky says spaces, resources, objects are communal. Very foreign idea for people today.
And I think that's like the downfall of actually why now we have such a problem of like homelessness, of not having anywhere to call your own, because we have prioritized so much this concept of ownership, of things belong to a specific person or at most a specific small group of people who can use it however they want, that then it means that we are leaving without resources, without care, a bunch of people that could be cared for. Like currently, there is no reason for homelessness to be a problem. If banks, if all these other things didn't own land, properties, and all of that, there would actually be a home for everybody. No one would actually have to live on the street on their own, dealing with all this crap.
Yeah. And food as well. There is more than enough food in this world to feed people. But when I tell you the amount of food that gets thrown out for capitalist reasons, I will never forget my very first job. I worked in a coffee shop. And at the end of the day, we would have homeless people. You know, live next to New York City. Like we have a homeless problem. And that my boss would say, we have to throw out the food because we can't sell it tomorrow. And I was like, but there's homeless people outside. Just give it to them. And they're like, but we don't want to make it a habit that they're going to expect that they should get food every day. We're a business. I said, that doesn't even fucking make sense.
And a lot of companies as well do it out of the liability. They're like, well, then they could sue us saying that they got sick and they got whatever because we gave them this food. And so we're not going to go through the problem of that. Instead, we'd rather just put it in the bin and let it absolutely go to waste.
And it's like, bro, they're homeless. With what money are they going to sue? You know how expensive it is to sue?
Literally.
Like, many houses are not used just sitting there.
Yeah.
Just sitting there. Just sitting there. You know, totally off topic for a second. Speaking of it's like, it makes no sense. Me and my partner have been talking about, you know, buying our own home, and we are lower. I hate the idea of middle class is a sham anyway, but like if we had to use the colonizer rhetoric, like, you know, we are above the poverty line and we've done everything we're supposed to do, done it right, got a college education, hardworking, blah, blah, blah. And it's like still not enough because these expectations that they place upon these bodies the rules in place are not meant to uplift community.
Yeah.
Point blank, period. But anyway, going back to the text. So because this text takes place during the pandemic, I think it's really important to note how important community was during the pandemic, even though we were all told, you know, you got to stay 6 feet apart. It was an airborne disease, all of these things. Like, yes, you know, be careful. People were getting sick. That is very true. People were passing away. It was a horrible situation. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, BIPOC communities were coming together. It was like, no, we all went to grandma's house. Every cousin said we were all within vicinity of each other because we knew the idea of getting to each other at what feels like an apocalyptic event after the events have started will be harder later to pull our it will be harder later to pull our resources if we are separated versus we come together at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Ma'am, where are you going?
She is the star of this show.
She is the star. Don't turn off the computer, please? Please don't press a button. No, don't step there. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, do you want to respond to that?
I don't know that I can add to it.
That's fair.
Like you've said.
Yeah.
Said.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, the authors talk about that a little bit, just like this idea of hello. Okay. She's sitting on my notes. Does she have diluted colors? Yeah. So I think she's technically a calico cat, but because she has a mix of all the colors, but they're very like grayish in tone. I can't see my notes, ma'am. Look at this. It's like, hello, these are my notes now.
Yeah. She's like, I'm the captain now.
Yes. Can I see that, please? Okay. Yes. Thank you. They talk about Alexis Pauline Gumbs, I think is the name that I wrote down. And the quote is, a home controlled of Black people who reject capitalism is deemed dangerous. That was the quote. How is that she's working?
She is a working woman.
She's a working woman, yes.
I mean, I think that makes me think of actually a video essay I watched recently that I mentioned to you about Beyonce by FD Signifier. And a big part of the conversation is actually how capitalism is being sold to Black communities as something to strive for. Like, you want to be a Black capitalist, you could actually benefit from this. And the inherent problem with buying into this capitalist structure definitely just check it out. FD Signifier is incredible video essayist.
Cool.
Um, and how, in the case specifically, for example, of Beyonce, she presents these images that are very pro-Black, but ultimately her capitalist practices do not support and are counterintuitive to the messages and the imagery that she uses in her artwork.
Mm,
Um, and how ultimately, if you just buy into the idea of like Black capitalism is good, that's inherently negative for
mm-hmm,
your own community, because ultimately that spirals into individualism, and exceptionalism, and none of those are actually going to uplift your whole community. It's all about just yourself.
mm-hmm,
Um, and that's ultimately, again, a problem. Like, the more hyper individualistic you become, the less that will benefit your
mm-hmm,
community. And you
mm-hmm.
should be caring about supporting your community and what will benefit your community as a whole versus just you as the individual.
Yeah, 110%. If I can find that video later, maybe you want to send it to me so I can link it in the description. 'Cause people sounds like people want to watch it and they're interested. But heck yeah. The new Lilo and Stitch movie is anti-communal. Listen, I got problems with the new Lilo and Stitch movie, many problems, but
It's
I haven't seen it, so I don't know if I can touch on the anti-communal as much as I can talk on the homophobia and like racism, but like
I think the new Lilo and Stitch, based on what I've heard, because I haven't watched it myself, is like, in some ways it's trying to be communal, because like ultimately Lilo ends up in the care of like David's grandmother, if I'm not mistaken.
okay.
But that's after the state has removed her from Nani's care.
Mhm.
Um because she was not able to get health care, and Lilo ends up needing the hospital, and she cannot
Mm,
afford that care, and so
okay.
she is taken by the state, um, and put
Got it.
into someone else's care. But, like, ultimately, like, if anything, regardless, were to happen to the other person who's caring for her, she could easily be taken to some other family, completely unrelated, unconnected to her culture, and
Mhm.
able to provide the care she actually needs.
Mhm.
Um, because part of the argument as well is that like Lilo, as portrayed in the original and partly in this one as well, is not your average kid. She is, for lack of a better word, a weird child who is different. Um,
Mhm.
and
Like
how would that child be cared for with people who do not understand her and have no need to understand her in a more deep way, which she needs.
mhm. Mhm.
So, you know,
Yep. So we got problems. Not watching the movie, by the way. So
I'm not planning to watch it either.
yeah.
I have no interest in a film that completely says it's okay for the state to take indigenous children from their indigenous families for their well-being, or that says yes, an indigenous Hawaiian woman will leave Hawaii to study something she can study in fucking Hawaii.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, okay, sure, sure.
Ew. It was the correct answer.
Yeah,
So, okay, ma'am, I'm gonna need my notes, honey. I'm so sorry. Can I? She's just like.
she's a working woman. You are taking her work away.
I, can I just see? Okay, let me see the one under your head, please. Okay. Um. Oh, okay. This is an important note, and then I'll give it back to you. I promise. She's like, no, give it back. So I wrote, it is important that white people recognize that BIPOC communities are not a monolith. It's important that these authors didn't give a clear answer as to how to solve all these problems versus the why, because outsiders will look at that answer closer than hearing the voices of the authors. There's a multitude of answers to decentering whiteness.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal, I think, of the book. So I think that if people are going to BIPOC books and looking for answers on how to do things, there are certain authors who give how to, like Ibram X Kendi with the How to Be Anti-Racist, right? Like there are certain books that are helpful and written for that audience. This is not a book that is intentionally written for a white audience.
Yeah. Which you mentioned to me based on like author interviews and all that. Like that's not their purpose.
Yes. I saw an author interview, which I thought was a great, funny moment, where the interviewer asked the authors, how do you feel about your book being in, I think it was like number 4 in Canada's bestseller, or in the top 10, basically. And then one of the authors goes, I mean, I don't get why white people are buying it. I was like, great, because it's not meant for them. Like, if they read it, great. I hope they learn something. I hope they listen. But it's more of like, this is for them and their communities.
Yeah.
Ma'am. Okay, you can have it back now. There we go. There you go.
And I feel like that's also an important thing, not just with nonfiction, but with fiction art. Like there is a difference between art that is made for all audiences versus art that is for a specific audience. It's like, it's fine if others enjoy it, appreciate it, or want to engage with it, but it is not for them. And therefore often is more easily misconstrued by that audience that was not its target audience, but obviously naturally, because these things are available, are not restricted to like, okay, you have to prove that you are a brown person to buy this book. Like that's never gonna happen.
Exactly 100%. And that's also very common in art, has been a big discussion in like the past 10 years of like grants for art spaces that are specifically for certain kinds of bodies. And I think that that's been more prominent in artwork that is about healing, which I think relates to this book in a lot of ways. It's about them talking about how to move forward in healing. So if you're interested in that, look into the Simone Lee's work. I think it was called the Medicine Clinic, which was a doctor's office that was set up inside of an art museum for Black bodies only. So no white reviewers were allowed to come in and experience and review that artwork. So nobody knows what it looks like except for the Black people that were there. And that's the point of the work, right? So yeah. Thanks. Feeling myself. I'm sorry, I scared you. Yeah. Right? Yes, absolutely. Okay. And then let's see, what other notes do I have? Are those on my notes? Oh no. Here's one. So Canada, as far as like Western nations and nations of power in the world, don't come to a lot of people's minds as an aggressive nation. Like the United States is an aggressor in many ways. The UK is an aggressor. Like there's a lot of countries that are aggressors. Canada is like a sleeper agent in a lot of ways, because Canadians have this rap for being super nice.
Yeah.
But they talk about Canada being one of the biggest contributors to like the oil industry and like all these industries that are hurting the environment and are benefiting and contributing to the same things that all of these other aggressors are doing. They're just more quiet about it.
Yeah, it's like it's another form of harm, because ultimately, like, it's something they mentioned that happens there, but happens here in the US. I'm sure it happens in other places, where it's like a lot of environmental harm is in the shape of environmental racism. Like it's these pollutants, these harmful things to that are not just harmful to the environment, but are harmful to people, are often localized to spaces
Mm-hmm.
where they know are primarily inhabited by people of color
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want the harm to be upon white people. So they'll move it shifted whenever possible to a place where it will harm those that they do not care about,
Mm-hmm.
that are not part of the, because that's, I remember them talking about that, the we, because there's this, the concept of we arguably should be, if it's we, even the phrase like we the people, that should be everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but that we is not actually all of us. It's us in this particular set of people. It's
Mm-hmm.
us who belong to this particular category, fit these particular traits. That's us, everyone, that's we. Everyone else is them. It's the other. Um, and there's a lack of care for anyone that is not in that concept of we.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yes. Yes. And also a lot of white feminism neglecting, like, white feminism, as in like second wave white feminism, the toxic white feminism is the one that is not intersectional or steals practices or appropriates practices from uh, other marginalized groups to claim it as a healing practice instead of letting those bodies help lead the healing. Yeah. 100%. Oh my gosh. I went to a henna workshop recently, actually, that I didn't even know who was running it. It was a henna workshop. Um, and the people who were running it were two white women. And they gave this whole history of henna and like the psychedelic 60s and all these things and how they went to India and all those things. And I'm like, there's there's nothing wrong with them wanting to like educate people on like the safety practices of doing it, and like there's a lot of health things that people should know before they do henna, but for them to be like not centering African and Indian and like West Asian voices in this education of it, is it felt weird. I was like, this
yeah,
is supposed to be a healing space, but like you're taking from these other cultures and leading the healing as if it's your own. That was my problem.
yeah.
Like, this is not yours.
And it's like a typical practice. Like this is something that happens over and over and over again, especially with white women. They
Mm-hmm.
will find a cultural practice of a different culture that is not theirs and like it, become interested in it, but then they have to make it their own and inherently whitewash it. Like
Mm-hmm.
remove what it is about it that is vital, because you cannot separate a cultural practice from their culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's not without being harmful. Like it's inherently harmful to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it happens so often, this whitewashing, and then sometimes even to the point of like, oh, look at this new thing that I learned about, but it was all me. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, it was not.
Nope.
But
Had to come from
okay.
somewhere. Right. Did he?
Oh boy.
Oh no. Oh no. No, no, no. If that's true, he's lost a lot of points with me. I mean, he's there again. This entire thing you're saying is that they exist and sustain themselves off of the same harmful rhetoric and practices.
Yeah.
But like that's also like, again, we're seeing all of this with what's going on right now in Palestine. We're seeing like none of these world events are, oh, I'm sorry. I scared her. Are separate from each other.
Yeah.
They're all related. Okay, so I think that's all I have as far as my notes. I did have some quotations I wanted to share and maybe like jump off of in our last couple of minutes, because I think we have like 10 minutes left. Hold on. Let's see. What is this one? Hold on. Oh, okay, hold on. Hold on. I just want to see where this starts. Okay, I'm going to read, I think it's like two, I have like multiple highlights on these 2 pages, so I'm just kind of going to read for like, give me like, bear with me for about 60 seconds, y'all. Big side eye, exactly, Howell. Yes, I love how open both authors were, and I think that this exemplifies that. Okay, so I'm going to start from, shoot, did I lose it? No! No, Steph, you were doing so well. Hold on. Sorry, y'all. Where am I? I lost
I mean,
it.
I don't know if this is connected to that at all, but it is important that this book started as an exchange of letters. Because pretty early on in the book, they talk about how letters specifically are a very vulnerable form of communication, because it takes time, care. You have to wait, think about your response, sometimes write, rewrite in a way that's not as instantaneous and easy as a text message or
Yes.
even a phone call. And that takes vulnerability and brings also the intellectual into a very personal, private space.
Yes. Okay, I found it. So I'm gonna jump in. Okay, so it says, the Black and Indigenous struggles are interlocking and interconnected. That all of us stand to gain from the growing movement to defund and abolish policing. Oh wait. Yes. Where? Oh shoot! Come on, Kindle. Don't be like that. Go here. There we go. Okay. In many instances, our communities have been, in these times, working together to dismantle organized violence and rebuild the world anew. This analysis, which led by for white Canadians, pits Black and Indigenous communities against one another. Because I think a couple pages before they talk about some white analysis, but regardless, pits Black and Indigenous communities against one another as we organize, often collectively, for abolition, decolonization, and a police and prison free world. It obfuscates and thus licenses continued negation of the overarching reality that our unfreedom is wrapped in one another's, and further, that it is these interlocking unfreedoms that are in fact constitutive of the Canadian state and capitalist states everywhere. Perhaps what keeps drawing my attention back even more, though, is that phrase in the title of the source that they're referring to, quote, "Let's save some outrage," unquote. Because this forwards the notion that white Canadians' outrage needs to be saved, neatly portioned out, and carefully preserved, lest it be wasted all in one go and on Blacks. And it is this aspect of the editorial that I cannot shake. It reveals something about the structure of Canadian society and its effective capacities. Perhaps more importantly, about its structural limited capacity for in-depth solidarity. Because your average Canadian, there is a limited amount of outrage that can be distributed across the vast injustices of our time. We live in a society that requires that we tolerate a certain level of violence and death. People dying of overdoses of exposure at the hands of police. This is the collateral damage of the mode of governance that we live under. Outrage, then, is finite. It necessarily has an endpoint, lest the discomfort lead to a broader demand for the always possible, continually deferred transformations that would be required to shift tyrannical racial logics of our time. Outrage needs to be carefully portioned out in moderate doses in order to preserve the status quo. The media functions and the public along with it, such that Indigenous genocide and anti Black violence erupt into the national discourse only in moments of brief national attention, allowing them to appear to be episodic rather than endemic and enduring, mutually constituting. outrage needs to be rationed precisely because only a limited amount of justice is in fact possible or achievable for the country to go on as it has, which of course the unstated goal of which is of course the unstated goal of liberal outrage, trimming here and there at the worst and most visible excess of harm while leaving a violent system intact. Too much justice, the liberation of Black and Indigenous people, would make Canada, as it stands today, impossible. And I was like, slay.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Like that there's a purposeful focus on certain events, certain things at certain times to give this idea of like, yes, there's people fighting against these injustices, but then okay, it was addressed, it was done, it's over. We don't have to, this is not an ongoing problem when that's precisely what it is. Like it has not stopped, it has never stopped. It's just through media, the various forms of media, it can be controlled and limited. We could even tie this inherently as well, partly to like TikTok, and part of why there was such a desire to suppress the platform because there is the ability to share information freely across boundaries, which is something inherently that is undesirable to the state, to maintaining the way things are. Because if you want to still have control over the people, exactly, you have to present justice as something that is a limited resource, as something that you can only take so far. Because then otherwise your current system has to collapse.
Yeah.
For there to be actual justice, the system has to be destroyed. It cannot stay the way that it is and actually provide justice the way it needs to.
And this is why people throughout history who were actively outspoken and act as grassroots news organizations have always been targeted. This is why there was the assassination of Martin Luther King. This is why there was the assassination of Malcolm X. This is why the Young Bloods, which if anyone doesn't know what that is the Puerto Rican communities both in Chicago and New York City about 40, 50 years ago, who were organizing to create community and news programming for Hispanic communities. This is why there were grassroots Black news organizations, because when it's no longer convenient, that news becomes silence. And as they said, it is endemic. It is something that is continuous. And so the silencing of these voices creates this false impression that it is a cycle in which there is violence and then there is peace. But that peace only exists for the unmarginalized body, and that false rhetoric creates this allows the system to perpetuate. Yeah. So I loved that. I was like, I gotta share this. Yes. But yeah, I think that's about all that I have. Do you have any closing thoughts any last thoughts?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Cool. Awesome. So again, thank you for joining us. If you would like to talk more about nonfiction and fiction books with us in the future, consider joining us on the Discord, again, by becoming a channel member at any level. Or our book discussions are always free. So make sure you subscribe to either my channel and Natalie's channel so you can get notifications as to when we do our monthly discussions. And we actually have another live show that's going to start in about 6 minutes over on Natalie's channel.
Yes. To talk about Futbolista.
Yes.
So get over there. We're talking queer shit now.
Yes. We're going to go talk Mexican gays. Let's go.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to hop off and we'll see y'all over there.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.